Okay, so thanks, Mirza. So one of the things, I guess the first thing I'll talk about is just even my own background. So I've been in the industry for 17 years. Scary to say that, but I've been doing mobile for over 10, which means that 10 years ago, just to kind of flash back a little bit, J2ME was the #1 platform, right? You had the Motorola Razr. Did anybody have that? You had BlackBerry was the best phone on the planet. They had just introduced a little trackball, right? So I was kind of across the board. So it was J2ME, Symbian on Nokia, was doing Windows Mobile, was doing BlackBerry Java, was doing kind of across the board, right? And had that front and center seat to mobile and kind of what's happened over the past couple years. Quite frankly, there's the time before the iPhone and the time after the iPhone, which is almost the way that you can think about it, or the pre-app era, the app era, and some now are saying about the post-app era, but I don't think we're there yet. Anyways, so what I wanted to talk to you about today was really Magnet's message platform and really why it matters and why we at Magnet Systems really believe that bringing in messaging is a critical part to all of your applications. So here's the first thing, right? So I'm going to throw up here all the chat apps on the App Store today, right? Google Play, pretty similar. These are the top apps. 6 of the top apps globally, right, of the top 10 globally are chat applications. You go look at WhatsApp. I think they just hit north of 1 billion. Facebook Messenger, you combine that, there's another 500 million on that. Line, it's a Japanese one that's pretty popular as well. I think it 400 million. WeChat around 600 million. Pretty good numbers, huh? Right? So the question is, how do I get a piece of that, right? So one of the things, and I don't know if you're familiar with this book called Hooked, right? It's by Nur Isles or something like that. I got to pull it out. But this is his model, right? This is his model for how to build an addictive application, right? And if you really kind of think about it, he talks about these 4 quadrants and the 4 different things that you actually look at. There's the trigger, there's an action, there's a variable reward, there's an investment, right? And if you really talk about what this means, trigger is kind of, why do you start this kind of application, or why are you engaged in this app? The action is it actually prompts you to actually do something within the application. The variable reward, you're going to get something out of doing this action, right? And then you're going to invest in it. You're going to make it easier and better to use. And ideally, the triggers, you have both an internal trigger, means there's a reason you do it for yourself. There's an impetus to use it. But there's an external trigger too. There's something else or someone else that's actually triggering this and to make this happen, make you want to engage with the app, right? And if you look at this, you can see how messaging itself fits into this. This chat model fits magically into this whole kind of conversation, right? When you actually you want to go and talk to somebody, that is your trigger. That is your own impetus. You want to have a conversation with one of your friends, with your loved ones. And so you're going to start off with that trigger, and you're going to go and launch that app, and you're going to go start messaging. What is the action? Well, you actually want to send a message, right? You want to actually go and communicate with them, right? You want to say something smart, cute, whatever. You're going to expect some kind of a response to that, right? Nothing worse than seeing that someone read your message but didn't respond, right? And finally, you're going to invest in it. You're going to start creating this list. You're going to add your friends. You're going to create all those things, right? By adding those people, adding those friends, you're actually creating that external trigger for yourself. When it's for someone else to go and message you, right? And this becomes that cycle where you're actually going and driving through this to actually continue to use this over and over again. So the key thing is, especially if you're looking at your apps, whether they be for your own targeting consumers, or even targeting something that you want for your enterprise or inside of your own company, really what you're after is people to use it and use it regularly, right? There's nothing more rewarding than that as an app developer as well. So, I mean, this is really the kind of the key in seeing how you can leverage this kind of going forward. So I was going to bring up something. So on every Friday night, I actually meet with my brother for dinner, right? And I actually go in to my app. I go into WhatsApp. See, that's WhatsApp. That's actually a real conversation. So I'll actually go in there and I'll actually go and talk about, where do you want to go eat, right? This is a tradition we've had for many years now, where we just kind of meet up for dinner, right? So what actually happens? So you end up going, like a lot of people, I'll go into Yelp, right? And I'll actually go and start looking at restaurants that might be interesting to go and check out, right? By the way, if you've ever been to Dosa, it's pretty good. A little pricey, but pretty good. Anyways, if I were to actually go and say, hey, let's go check this out, does anybody know how I'd actually go and share this with my brother? What's that? So send the link. How do I get the link out of my native app? What's that? Copy the URL. Well, see, there's not even a URL here to copy, right? This is a native app, so it's not like I'm rolling to the top of my browser. So that's what a lot of people, as I've done kind of some of this talk before, some people will take a picture and send it to them. It's actually pretty ridiculous if you think about it, right? In terms of what actually happens. I tend to cut and paste, right? You can hold, cut and paste, and I'm going to go and try to shove it into WhatsApp. It's, you know what? If there was a person at Yelp right now, a product manager here, they'd be screaming their head off, right?
Yahoo changed that.
What's that?
Yahoo changed that.
Yahoo changed that?
Yeah, Yahoo chat automatically as soon as you mention
Right. See, but here's the issue, right? If you're the Yelp developer, you have left their app. Golden rule, right? You do not want people leaving your app, right? You want people to enter your app, and you want them to stay in your app. The moment they leave it, there's no more of, the advertising revenue you get. And by the way, the rule is they never come back, right? So they've gone through the effort. They're saying, we are known, Yelp is known to be the trigger for looking for restaurants to go to. That might be a good place to check out. But they have just thrown their trigger away. Their action has taken them out of the app to somebody else. And that's why WhatsApp is growing like crazy and Yelp is having challenges. All right? I'll say one of the couple of reasons. Anyways, the point being is it's not so much that you should build, I'm not saying go and build another messaging app. There were the 6 that you already shown. The list goes on. You can keep looking in the App Store and see how many chat apps are there. It's still surprising to see how many of them are in the top 100. But they're not really, quote unquote, that relevant anymore, right? What I'm saying is that use and find that value, right? Find out why people have actually started your application. Understand that intent, right? Make sure you deliver that on that value, right? And then leverage something like messaging to kind of reinforce and re-engage people on that key value, right? So the idea is that this is actually kind of starting to happen already, that there are people that are building chat inside of their applications, right? We have a banking app, TD Ameritrade. They just introduced chat into their application. You could talk to brokers and your traders on that. There's an open forum to do that. There's, for hockey fans, there's stuff there to discuss between fans. Hopefully there's not too many swear words on that. And there's kind of navigation apps that actually started talking about that. We got Waze in the corner over here. And so the idea is think about how you can bring that into your own app to start to engage, right? There's nothing more viral than that idea where you're going to get a message from somebody, from a friend, and say that, hey, I want to talk to you about something, right? But the point really is to say go beyond even chat. And what you're going to be able to do when you bring it inside of your own application as opposed to in WhatsApp is that you can actually talk about, sorry, this is, what you can actually start to send, here's just a little bit of code that I'm going to throw up today. You can actually start to send a lot more than just the message that you're sending, right? When I just cut and paste into WhatsApp, you could say, oh, I'm going to send a message like some text, like let's eat here tonight, right? By the way, there's a problem with doing let's eat here tonight, because when you're in WhatsApp, I don't know what here is, right? But when you build it, imagine this was built inside of Yelp. Here could be the page that you're actually looking at, right? That you're sharing that restaurant ID, right? That you can actually go and look up and say on the other side when they receive that message that you can actually go and pop that up. And you can do even crazier things, like you don't even have to display these things. You can have a lat long, right? That lat long might be, I don't know, the location of the restaurant, might even be the location of your friend, right? So that when you're actually sending this information, you can show, you can negotiate, right? Finding a restaurant that's in between the both of you. Keep going, like maybe I should say that you should bring a sweater because it's 54 degrees and foggy, right? This is what you start to be able to do that goes well beyond what you can do even just by sharing text or sharing a chat window with your friend. Because when you start to build it inside of your application, you can start to share a lot more of this context and what's actually important to you. Yes, question?
It's not depend on the different natures of business, right? But how many different messaging types that have you seen, such as, in Yelp, that might be allowing you and your brother who are already in your contacts,
Right.
or allowing people in the same location, or like what's the logic behind the messaging? Like who are the people who are able to talk to each other? How many different types have you seen?
Okay. So it was a long question, so I'm going to ask you to say it one more time.
Sure. So like messaging, who are the users? Who are allowed to message other people? Are they the people in the same context, like your phone contacts that you have access to them, such as WhatsApp and WeChat, or the people who are in the same location, or who are
Right.
online at the same time,
Sure.
using Yelp or whatever? Like,
So-
how many different types?
Yeah, so absolutely, right? So the question is, how do you decide who you can actually message to, right, within your messaging context, right? And I think that really the idea is that this, in some ways, I'm going to open it up to the app developers to decide who that is, right? That is ultimately about targeting, right? And thinking about how you want to target. We certainly have people that have used our platform to do location-based targeting. So you communicate with people that are only nearby, right? We have communication paradigms that are more invite only. So you can have an invitation for a specific group. It might be private. You might have a topic, right? And we'll talk more about channels later on, but channels that you can subscribe to. I mean, you can think of them as interest groups or something to that effect, where you can actually have people interested and are going to start publishing on this, right? So all of this, the whole idea is that this stuff is real time, right? And that real-time paradigm actually changes the way that you are even going to approach who you talk to, when you talk to them, and how you expect responses to come back. Okay?
How much are you using elements of Telenav for the backend channeling?
Say that one more time.
Are you using ropes from Telenav for the backend channeling or
So I guess Telenav's my past. I work at Magnet Systems, right? But just to kind of answer that question, I mean, the whole idea is that it's really up to you in terms of what that means, right? What we've talked about is to say we can provide those locations, right? And you can shove them into any kind of mapping API, right? Whether that's Google Maps or here or Telenav or OpenStreetMaps. I mean, the list kind of goes on in terms of what you can do.
where's the geospatial recognition?
What's that?
Where's the geospatial recognition?
Where's the geospatial recognition? So the idea, what I just showed was an example of what you can pass, right? So what you do with a lat long is sort of up to you, right? So we're not providing the geospatial platform per se. Yeah. Right, so the idea is that you can pass that data along, just like you can pass any other data along, right? Oops. So kind of moving beyond chat. So this is what I'm kind of alluding to, right? So the easiest way to talk about messaging is often to talk about chat. And it's not to say that chat in itself is not important, but the change in the ability to actually do something different beyond just the text that you actually send is really about collaboration. If you really think about what I just did with Yelp, it's really collaborating between myself and my brother to decide to make a decision, to perform some kind of action. We're going to go have dinner here, right? And so this is really kind of the essence, right? That we're actually thinking about this in kind of different contexts. If you think about, you can create a team. A team might collaborate. This might be even inside of your own company. You can think of, what's that hot startup, Slack, right? Is about how you collaborate or chat within a team, but it's not even quite to the point of actually collaboration. They've got nice plugins and whatnot, and it's mostly still centered around open text conversations. But if you really talk about what it means to collaborate, I think that's really key. I'm going to keep going. That a part of this communication, a part of this real-time thing is about building community within your application as well, right? So that you can engage with all the people inside of your application. Look, the thing that Facebook has taught us, right, is that every interaction has a certain social element to it. We as human beings are social by nature, and we look for those social responses to come back, right? And as part of this, building that community, building the engagement for your app. When you have a community within your app, you get a unique way of actually people will look at it and engage with your application. And finally, we even talk about the source of crowdsourcing, right? It's how do you actually get information, boots on the ground, so to speak, to understand what's going on, right? And you'll see things like people creating content, right? Or creating content or filtering content or what's the word I'm looking for? But nurturing that content to actually go and deliver something of value to their specific communities, right? And so building that crowdsourcing kind of capability is really kind of essential in this collaborative real-time kind of model, right? You can think of, you're mentioning geospatial, right? You can think of all the stuff that's done with regards to traffic and data collection, right, as being a collaborative real-time communication between users. And finally, it's really about not just the messages that you actually send, it is about the context that you actually go and deliver with that. It's not just, I'm saying I'm stuck in a traffic jam. It's about, well, what is my speed? What road am I on? All those kinds of things that you would never really communicate, through text. And finally, as we talked about, these are channels. By the way, those are TV channels. That communicating on channels is really about how do you collect those people together. To your point, right? What is this? This is a combination of the who and the what that people are interested in. And there might be different kinds of groups of people in terms of what kind of channels are actually interesting to them, right? You might talk about topics that people might be interested in. You might have locations that are basically become channels by which people are engaged in. There's a lot of different things or attributes you can think of that might actually go and evolve in terms of how people want to interact inside of your application. And so, I talk a lot about this stuff, and quite frankly, for a lot of the companies that we talk to, they've considered adding something like communication or real-time communication inside their app, but it's actually been pretty hard to do that. If you really think about what it actually takes, because we've thought about it, right? So you've got to think about all the different platforms you actually have to run on, right? You've got to think about whether or not, you have network connectivity, right? Whether you're, offline, right? Or you're traveling somewhere. You've got to consider, what happens? Do I actually get a read confirmation, right? Do I see actually, do I know that these messages were actually delivered, right? Do you have invitations, right? Do I understand how people are actually going to go and join this community? How do I scale this for a large number of conversations? And again, how do I actually integrate this with the rest of my own application? If I'm doing logic in here, how do I trigger different messages inside my system? That's why we built Magnet Message, right? And just to kind of talk about this a little bit and what we've built, right? We have SDKs for iOS and Android, right? By the way, we're true believers in the native application experience. We have a messaging server which behaves like a router. It routes actually messages to users, between users, and recognizing the difference between their different devices and how to send it to an iPhone versus an Android phone to know whether someone's online or offline and make sure that that message gets delivered. We have support for one-to-one conversations. We have support for group conversations, for large public forums to actually go and share this. And of course, the whole idea of actually sharing that context, right? And what we provided is actually Apache 2.0 open source. Yes, I said that. It is, everything we actually provide here is actually all open source, right? And so, just some of the things, just to kind of talk about the public and private kind of conversations, the idea is that basically you can build your own Twitter, right? Or you can build your own Slack, right? What does it mean? One is public, everyone can see it. Everyone can see what you do on Twitter, for those that made that mistake. Or it can be more private, and private to your community, your company, which is what Slack is about.
For iOS, are you guys going to update to Swift, or you just want people to use bridge apps?
So we are in the process of updating to Swift, right? But right now it's Objective-C. We have examples that do the bridge, yeah. We have invitations, right? That is built on context, and this is, of course, built on our platform. So just some notes here. I'm just going to close out, right? Just come to our site. You can go download it. We have a sandbox that's hosted. You can start playing with this thing, and go create an application. It's free to go and use, okay? So that's it. All right, thank you. Mirza, you have a question?
What are the most unexpected use cases people are using this for?
What are the most expected? Oh. Let's go. What's the most unexpected use cases? We've had some pretty crazy use cases. I think, so we've been going to a whole bunch of hackathons. The latest one we went to was at CalHacks, which was 2,100 students. We did integrate. What's that? They have nowhere else to go. They're a captive audience for free T-shirts. Yeah. No, that was actually pretty crazy. So I think one of the things that we saw people use it for was an instant share. So one of the contestants did this instant share of YouTube. So basically through a swipe, they actually sent this to their friend, right? And that's just a real-time message that was actually being sent. And they sent basically the YouTube link. It could launch, if it sent it to your desktop, they had a Chrome extension, and it could send it to your mobile, whether it's iPhone or Android, and actually go launch YouTube, and people could actually watch it simultaneously. So that was pretty interesting, like completely away from talking about any kind of communication and whatnot. There was another contestant that did something for basically a travel kind of application. So I mentioned crowdsourcing. So the idea was that they were actually looking at, they have those dictaphones or those things when you go to a tourist site. They tend to be notoriously out of date and have filthy headphones or something. The idea is that you can use your basic phone to do this. People could go and record it. When you walk by, it was proximity based. So you would actually join a channel that was defined based upon your current location, and you can listen to kind of what's going on about the things you're seeing right nearby. So it's kind of geared towards tourists. And the idea is that it could actually be crowdsourced. So if somebody actually went and said they had some updates to this thing, they could actually place that point of interest there. Okay. Any other questions? Say that one more time.
Are you starting from scratch, or is this in help with another company that can't check it?
No, so this is, so we are starting from scratch, right? So, I mean, most of our stuff is built on open source, right? So, we continue that open source path, right? If you really talk about what we're doing as a company, a lot of this is about bringing this to, those larger companies. It's bringing it to the enterprise, right? As you actually see people, how you adopt this even in terms of communication. We've seen a lot of use cases for people just in customer service, right? In terms of, you need help completing your order, you need help, with this transaction, right? There's a lot of things in that space that people are actually looking for a solution for and haven't been able to. They've done it on the web, but they haven't been able to do it on mobile.
How's this being used in enterprise apps internally? So companies have
So I don't know. Am I allowed to mention a name? Do you know?
Sure.
Yeah? You know which one we're going to talk about? Okay. So we are actually working with a large cosmetics company, one called Este Lauder. And what they've actually done is they built an app that's actually designed to work with not just their employees, but their extended partners, right? So they have a bunch of makeup artists, so I've learned more than I ever want to know about the cosmetics industry. But they have makeup artists that actually work kind of bricks and mortar. They work in Macy's, they work in Sephora and all these kind of places. A lot of them are contractors. Actually, the vast majority of them are. They're not necessarily badged employees, but they have certain privileges as contractors to actually go in. And what they've done is they've actually built an app. It's kind of a Pinterest meets Instagram kind of application that's actually designed to go and engage with those makeup artists, show them what's cool, show them what's hot happening nearby, in that real-time collaboration to feed back to their headquarters, right? In case you don't know, they need to know as soon as possible whether this color is selling or not, right? And so they can change their product line in real time, right? And they can see, is this hot in Paris but cool in LA? Is it hot in New York but not so much in, I don't know, in Brazil, right? That stuff is what they actually go and look at to in this real-time collaboration. And they have surveys they go out with, and they just use this platform to actually drive all those things. So that's just kind of one example. And it's a broader context because it's not just, it is badged employees, but it is kind of embracing that, I'll say, the modern employee, which might be more fluid than that and not necessarily be badged and have a cube, right?